There we go. I think you should be able to hear me now. Welcome back, everyone. Welcome to NFR. Welcome to SAFRL Tier 2. It's time for the finale. It's time for Mexico. Of course, as you can see, a small field. This is the side effects of the end of a season. Lots of times we just start to see drivers who would be here every other week just taking a night off as they see there is no longer any hope for them in the championship. Sometimes interest starts to go away. Of course, we've already got some drivers out on the circuit. Today is not going to be the best commentary session, I must warn you ahead of time, because well, I never charged my controller, so I'm going to have to do this from the comfort of a racing wheel. So not really sure how this is going to go. Oh, there we go. Still trying to figure out what button does what. So this is spikes. One of two Ferraris here this evening. Very small field, but we do have the pair of Ferraris. We do have the pair of RBs. I think those might be the only teammates on track. Mercedes just the one, Sauber just the one, Alpine 1, Red Bull 1, Haas 1. So I think the only two full teams we have here tonight are the RBs and the Ferraris, the two Italian teams. Panda sets the first lap of the evening. It's a 15.5. Surely we're going to see that lap time come down much more as the session progresses. Spikes over the line, 15.3. So he's already found 2/10. On that initial run, Skull over the line, that's not a representative lap time. I think he must have backed out of that. It was a 22.7. We're still waiting for laps from Tyler Boy, Top Gun, Pantry Star, Boinkies and Gotzi. All of those drivers are out on track. No one in the pits at this moment. Top Gun, the only Red Bull, must be feeling what Max Verstappen feels like, being the only Red Bull in the field. Surely they can upgrade one of those RB drivers into a Red Bull. Spikes, fastest man so far, 15.3. Then Panda, 15.5. 2/10 of a second cover the top two. We've got Stoffel in P3. It's a little bit of a gap between the top two, almost half a second further back. Then Top Gun, Gotzi and Skull. Skull was not a representative lap, I do not believe. It's going to come over the line now. It's a 116.5. Rather a 118.5. Still got more than that. Don't think we'll see any surprises in the tyres column. Everybody on a set of softs. It's the best compound available, the quickest compound available, and that's the compound you're going to want in qualifying. Qualifying is all about that one lap pace, setting up the car for that perfect lap time. Of course, once you get to the race, the scenario does change. You have to start to manage things a little bit better. You need to start thinking about those tyres. Can't abuse them in the beginning if you intend to take them late. But in qualifying, there's only one strategy to worry about, and that's go purple. And that's what Panda has done. He's found an extra 10th on that initial run, and he's gone up to a 15.2, so throws the gauntlet down. Tell Spikes, if you want to take provisional pole, well, you're going to have to do a little bit more work this evening. Not going to get it with that initial run. Just 0.3 of a second covering the top three drivers. 15.2, 15.3, 15.4. Nothing in it between those top three. We're still waiting for a lap from Tylee Boy. Just the 9 drivers in the field. For this finale. And of course, as small as the field is, we almost got no stream as well. Having all sorts of trouble with the stream, and then just managed to get things going as the guys were readying up. So perfect timing, but a little bit of stress here in the comms box. This is the Salba of Boinkies. Somebody has squeezed into the lobby. I believe that's Andres. We've gone up from the 9 initial runners up to 10. So we're going to have the 1 extra driver in the race. Of course, we might still see a few more squeeze in. Everyone in the pits at the moment, with the exception of Tylee Boy. He's going to get all of the coverage for now. A good time for the Haas sponsors. Get all of the coverage out on circuit. Welcome to everyone who is watching the stream. Of course, this is the finale. Then SAFRL is going to go on a little bit of a break. We will of course return with season 9. And once I have confirmed dates, I will be broadcasting that on this channel, while we will be taking a break on Monday and Wednesday nights. All the other streams will be as usual. DRS on a Thursday, SKR on a Sunday. The moment SAFRL comes back, they'll be back on this channel's calendar. And of course, while they're away, there may be some non-championship races. And if any of those are broadcast on the channel, I'll let you know before the time. Now this is Stoffel. He was the solitary Mercedes not so long ago, but Andres has been able to squeeze into the lobby. So that means we will have 2 Mercedes, 2 Ferraris, 2 RBs. Everybody else is going to be missing a teammate. A lot of drivers on outlaps, just the 2 on a quick lap. One of them is Stoffel, the other one is Gotzi. He's down in P9. No lap time from Andres. He remains in the pits. Wonder if we'll see him emerge from the pits before the end of quali, or if he's happy to start at the rear of the field. Of course, attendance not great, but DRS is having a race of its own as we speak. A test race, I believe. So that will have also taken some of the drivers that would maybe be available as reserves. They could be racing over on that side. But this is the final round. Seen it many times before. Leagues start with 20. Very, very rarely end with 20. This is Panda. Quickest time of the evening so far. It's that 15.2 followed by a 15.3 and a 15.4. So nothing in it between the top 3. They remain close. Panda's on an outlap. Spikes, man in P2 on a quick lap. as is Pantry Star, man in P3. Pantry Star goes fastest at a 14.9, 3/10 quicker than anything we've seen this evening so far. We're about to see Spikes come over the line, are we? No, we don't. He's coming to the pits. Skull, on the other hand, he's gone P2. So one Ferrari dives into the pits, the other one gets onto the front row. Nicely done. Wonder if that was just a bit of a toe from his teammate. Those two cars were very close together when Spikes came into the pits. Moments later, Skull went P2. 15.1. That is a very competitive lap time. Still 6 minutes to go in the session, so everybody's still going to be able to get back to the pits, have another go. Pantry Star from Skull, then Panda, Spikes P4, Stoffel P5, Boinkies P6, Top Gun P7, Gotzi and Tiley Boy. Then no lap time from Andres. I'm not sure we're going to see him come out of the pits in quali. First time we'll see that. Mercedes may very well be at the start of the race through the old baseball stadium, and Skull returns to the pits. A lot of cars now in the pits. We're having a bit of a lull period in qualifying. It's just when everybody is just sitting in the pits doing their final adjustments and everyone waiting to go out. A lot of the drivers like to leave it late. Sometimes you go a lap earlier thinking you'll get a clean racetrack, and as you end your out lap, you see a whole stream of cars exiting the pits. Getting your quickest lap, that's one thing, but this is not time trial. You have to share the circuit with other drivers. And if you'll end up running into people on your quickest laps, well, you've only got yourself to blame. P5 and 6 now, the two Mercedes. So Andres did come out of the pits and set a lap. So 16.0. It's the quickest man out on track. Panda has gone even quicker. Saw the lap time from Pantry Star. It was a 14.9. Panda says challenge accepted. 14.7. And all of a sudden, that Ferrari time, that 15.1 that looked so competitive not so long ago, all of a sudden it's 4/10 adrift from provisional pole. So the lap times keep on coming down. Stoffel's on an out lap. Andres will be on an in lap. Those are the two Mercedes. This is the Mercedes just ahead. In fact, 4/10 ahead of his teammate. Stoffel in P5. No, he's a quick driver. All of these drivers are quick in their own right. And with a field of just 10, it's really open for anybody. Mexico quite famous for its safety cars. Once you get more than one or two safety cars in a race, can really jumble up the order. Some of your quicker drivers may be handicapped by that safety car. Some of the drivers at the rear of the field could be propelled up the field because of that safety car. So lots of things can happen in the race. Qualifying just gives you an indication of who's the quickest man around the circuit, but those results do not always translate into the race. First of all, you've got to translate that pace into race pace. And then if you're able to translate that pace into race pace, you need to keep that car on track for the entire distance of the race. So, not as easy as going pole position in qualifying. Got a lot of work to do later on in the evening, and Mexico's a difficult circuit to get that right balance on the car, that right setup on the car. Parts of the circuit look like a modern street circuit with its long straights. Other parts of the circuit, classical Mexico circuit. Need to find a balance that works for both. Something that feels good all around the circuit. Or at least find a compromise. Two Ferraris close together out on track again. Wonder if they're going to be doing anything to help each other. I think Skull, on the last occasion, he may have got a slipstream from his teammate. So I wouldn't be too surprised if we see it the other way around this time. Skull is the car ahead. So I think he's going to be giving Spikes the tow. Of course, always risky. You know why the drivers do it, because you can get a amazing advantage down the straight. But it's always risky. You could run into your teammate, or your teammate makes a mistake at the wrong moment. And that's the end of your lap. So far, Ferrari's doing what they need to do. Skull gives him all the tow he can give him, then pulls off the racing line. That was clear. Ferrari trying to help Ferrari. And if they're going to get up onto that front row, they're going to need all the help they can get. Skull a 15-1. He does still have time to get around the racetrack, I think, and set one lap. This will be Spike's final attempt. Just 30 seconds remaining on the clock. In fact, I think Skull might not have enough time to get around. He is going pretty slowly. All right on board with the Ferrari. If I can just figure out my buttons. There we go. On board with Spikes. So commentary on the wheel is much more difficult. Never going to leave my controller uncharged again. Spikes goes quickest. 14.3. I wonder how much of that would have been the tow from his teammate. Wouldn't have been all of it, but it certainly would have helped. Spikes goes into provisional pole right at the end. But not if Panda has anything to say about it. He was in pole not so long ago, 14.7. Now he's going to have to find himself a whole other 4/10. I don't think he's got it. He was going slowly there around the final corner. I think that is the session for everyone. We've just got Andres, I think, out on track, and he's about to go past that checkered flag. Does he find an improvement? Yes, he does. Goes just ahead of his teammate. 15.3. Andres, P5. So there we go, there are your official results for qualifying. Spikes takes pole position right at the end there, a little bit of help from his teammate. Then Panda P2, Pantry Star P3. They're followed by Skull, Andres, Stoffel, Boinkies, Top Gun, Tiley Boy, and Gotzi. Of course, that was qualifying. Soon we will be underway for the race. We're going to start off with a formation lap, of course. Because I was running around till these guys readied up to start the stream, I'm just going to take a minute and I'll be back with you guys shortly. And we're back. Thanks for your patience. We're just struggling with the stream prior to get going, and usually I have a few things I get ready, but since we are running around last minute, we didn't get them done. Apologies, just took a bit of a break there. It will be the last one for tonight. We're on a formation lap. Of course, this is the opportunity drivers get one more time. This lap is all about preparation for turn one. It's about getting your tires up to temperature, getting your brakes up to temperature, and making sure that car is in its best possible condition when it arrives at turn one. Of course, this will be the first time the drivers are feeling the car with a full tank of fuel. So after qualifying, throughout qualifying, you can just throw that car around on the soft tire, do whatever you want, be aggressive. When it comes to the race, you've got a full tank of fuel. The car's going to feel a little different through certain corners. Might even be a corner or two that you would have taken full throttle, that all of a sudden you can no longer do that. So it's going to be Spikes at the front of the field from Panda, Pantry Star and Skull. That's your top four. And then obviously the two Mercedes P5 and 6. Off we go. Ferrari versus Alpine into turn one, and for now it looks like the Ferrari's definitely got the better start. Panda stays P2, Pantry Star now goes up into P2, so Panda's lost a position, Skull's lost a position. Andres up and down the field, really difficult to see. Everything will be a lot clearer when they come out of this sequence of corners. Spikes leads the way from Pantry Star, then Panda P3. Got Andres P4, Skull, he's lost a couple of positions, he's down to P5. Then Stoffel P6. Boinky's at the rear in P7. That looks like a SKR car from last night. Very similar liveries to what we saw last night with the green and black. Then Top Gun P8, Tyler Boy P9, and Gotzi. He's making up the field. This is the view from the leader. That's not the leader. Goodness me. That's the leader. So Spikes leads the way from Pantry Star, Panda P3, Andres P4. Skull still in P5. He lost the position at the start of the race, hasn't been able to reclaim it. Purple for Spikes, that's because he's in front at the end of the first lap. That fastest lap will come down considerably. Of course, only 10 drivers in the field, so anybody who does get that fastest lap will get the extra point towards the championship. This is Pantry Star in P2, followed closely by Panda. This is the view from the Mercedes of Andres. See the three leaders, the three podium sitters just ahead of him. For now, things look pretty calm in the Mexican Grand Prix. We don't see anybody attacking, anybody being too aggressive. Looks like everybody is happy to hold station for now, but that's going to change as soon as DRS becomes a thing. And it's going to become a thing shortly. Spikes out front, 7/10 of a second, then a further 7/10 to Panda in P3. Andres, 8/10 of a second, then Skull. So everyone within DRS there in the top 5. Boinkies and Stoffel just switching positions. Boinkies P6, Stoffel P7. He's falling down the field, going in the opposite direction of his teammate. Remember, I think he started in P5. He's lost 2 positions. Then Top Gun, Gotzi and Tidy Boy. View from the man in P2. He is now starting to pull away from P3. You can just see that gap, 1 second just over the DRS barrier, and that's very, very important. For Pantry Star though, he can't let this Ferrari get too far up the road, needs to stay with him throughout. One thing we haven't looked at so far is the tyres, and more of what we saw really on Monday night. Looks like the majority of the field starting on the medium tyre. 3 of the drivers choosing to go on the hard, doing something different. That's Skull, Stoffel and Tidy Boy. Pantry Star cruises past the Ferrari into the lead. That's the power of DRS. That might explain Skull's lackluster start. He is on the hard tyre. That tyre takes a little bit more time to get up to temperature. And in the initial stages at least, those mediums are going to have superior grip. Going to be a little bit quicker. They're going to give you better traction coming out of the corners. But those mediums will fall off, and those hards will come into their own. And they will be hoping for no early safety car. Of course, when you start on the hard tyre, you want to go as deep into the race as possible. That's your strategy. So when a safety car comes out too early in the race, lap 4, lap 5, it really just messes things up a little. Pantry Star, the new leader of the race. Spikes was the leader of the race for the first 4 laps. Then he got passed into this very corner. And as easy as you like it, way before they ever reached the apex of the corner, way before they ever reached the braking point, the overtake was already done. And DRS around this Mexican circuit almost feels a little too strong. That's an Alpine. That's an Alpine. Going down the field, we saw him sliding sideways. Where is Panda? He's right at the rear of the field. There he is. Has got the Alpine going again. Let's have a look at the front wing to make sure if he's got all of it. Well, we cannot see from that angle. Whenever I need to see a detail on the car, the game goes to helicopter shot. And when I really want a helicopter shot, it refuses to give me one. Well, that is a broken Alpine. Just confirmation, the right hand side there of the front wing. He's not going to be able to drive around with that. That's not just an end plate. That's a lot more than an end plate. Car's going to be understeering, going to be feeling terrible. There's really just no point in staying out there. The amount of time you lose trying to save the 25 seconds by not going into the pit stop, I assure you, you'll lose those 25 seconds pretty quickly. For a moment I thought Panda was staying out. He comes into the pits from P10. He'll be hoping for a safety car later on in this race to bring him back into the equation. Spikes in P1, 4/10 of a second is the gap, so neither Pantry Star or Spikes, when getting into the lead of the race, have been able to shake off an opponent. And Spikes, well, that is disappointing for Spikes. And well, the Rolex sign, the Ferrari car on board, something just reminded me of Vettel in Hockenheim for a second. It looked like he had everything under control. All of a sudden, the F1 car just reminded him that F1 cars can be quite challenging to drive. We've got a new lead Ferrari. It's now Skull up into P2. His teammate was having a fantastic race up until that point. We all got to see it live from his onboard camera. Now, was that a mistake? Was that a nudge from the rear? Wish I could tell you. We were on board. We didn't get to see what was happening in the mirrors. If it was a mistake, he'll be feeling very frustrated. If it was a nudge, he'll probably be feeling a little bit more than frustrated. Skull in P3. He's just been passed by Andres, so it's Pantry Star, Andres, Skull, then Top Gun, Boinkies and Stoffel. Gotzi P7, he's made up a few positions. Last time we saw him, he was at the rear of the field in P10. Then Tidy Boy, Spikes. Just go down to that Ferrari real quick. May have picked up damage along the way because he's decided to come into the pits, put on a brand new set of hards. Those hards would have to go an awfully long way if he intends on finishing the race on those. But of course, early days, we've got a caution. That's all it is. It disappears from our screens and we're ready to go again. Caution back on our screens. Just giving us a little reminder that safety cars are a possibility. It's not going to be straightforward right to the end. Look at the battle between these two. It's Skull versus Andres, Ferrari versus Mercedes, side by side stuff. Who's going to be the bravest on the brakes? Skull breaks that little later. This looks like Andres conceded the position at a stage there. Knows there's better places on the racetrack to make that move. Pantry Star leading the way by 6.5 seconds. That's a very clear and dominant lead. Then Skull P2. Fortunately for him, he doesn't have a dominant P2. He's coming under a lot of pressure. He is on the hard tyre. Those drivers around him, they'll be on the medium tyre. Those mediums, I don't think they've passed their absolute peak, but they will begin to fall off. That's when the track should become advantage Ferrari, advantage Skull at least. His teammate also on a set of hards, but those two cars out of sync, as Spikes had to make a pit stop for damage. Here's Top Gun. Big lockup from the Red Bull. Loses all momentum on the exit, and that's going to allow Mercedes to come right back at him. And we have a virtual safety car. Of course, if you've been watching this channel for a while, you don't need to know this, but if you're new, of course, virtual safety car, not a full safety car. It's not going to bring the field together. The drivers just need to drive within a certain delta until that virtual safety car is over, and make sure your delta isn't red when that virtual safety car ends, otherwise you get yourself a drive-through. No drive-throughs this time round, everybody doing what they needed to do. Pantry Star 6.7 seconds, so he hasn't lost any of that lead. Skull P2, Top Gun P3, then Andres. Remember, he was the last one to squeeze into the lobby. I'm guessing he hasn't had too much practice of the Mexico circuit, and he's up in P4. Skull versus Top Gun versus Andres. Those cars very close together. Top Gun getting tired of the pressure applied by the Mercedes, so now he wants to clear the Ferrari. Try and build himself a gap in clean air, but before he can do that, he needs to clear Skull. Of course, the best place to do it's going to be on that main straight DRS into turn 1. That seems to be the most popular of the overtaking places on the circuit, and probably the one with the least amount of risk. If we get two cars racing each other into the stadium section with 2 or 3 laps to go, we might find some interesting overtake opportunities. But at this point in the race, drivers still playing the safe game, haven't even got to the first pit window. Of course, some cars have pit, but that is as a result of damage or untimely pit stops. Pantry Star, 6.1 seconds up the road, so he's actually starting to lose a little bit of time. Top Gun in P2, then Skull. These two have been trading places for the last couple of laps. Boinkies in P5. Very consistent driver. Not always one to blitz the field away. Usually goes a little bit unnoticed under the radar. And then as the race goes on, might not have the ultimate pace. But he's probably one of the drivers I would describe with the ultimate consistency. He's able to put in that lap over and over and over again. And if the cars around him are tripping over themselves, making mistakes, picking up penalties, the next thing you know, Boinkies is way up the field, and you're not even quite sure how he got there. He's done it many, many times, stolen podiums from nowhere. But so far, everyone in the field staying out of that penalties column. Just Tylee Boy with a penalty. That is probably going to be a 3-second penalty. No, it's not. That is, well, that is a lot of penalties. I'm not even sure what combination that's in. 16 seconds worth of penalties for Tylee Boy. He is at the rear of the field on a brand new set of softs. I presume some of those penalties are going to be served at his next pit stop. I'm just trying to work out what combination of penalties that is. Just bring that up again. 16. So I think that's obviously 2 track infringements for corner cutting, 3 seconds apiece, and then a 10-second penalty for his last entry into the pits. Top Gun, Boinkies, Red Bull, Sauber fighting into turn 1. It's not going to be close enough this time round for the Kick Sauber. Just going to have to stay behind the Red Bull and show a little bit more patience. Skull in P2. Got a gap now down to P3 and 5 seconds up to Pantry Star. So the gap has closed somewhat. Remember, it was in the 7-second mark. It's now 4.8. I wonder if those mediums just starting to fall off. Starting to feel the effects of grip disappearing. You're expecting there to be grip on the exit of a corner, and all of a sudden the car has a big squirm. To take a knock to the confidence, makes you second guess things. It's always tricky driving on the used tyres when you're trying to extend your run. Pantry Star staying out for another lap. It's going to do a minimum of 13 laps on those mediums. Ferrari of Skull in P2. Of course, he started on the hard tyre, so his intention would have been to go deeper into the race than everybody else around him. Only 2 other cars started on the hard tyre. They started towards the rear of the field. So out of the quick runners, only Skull going for that strategy. Start on the hard, end on the medium. That means in the beginning of the race your opponents have that slight tyre advantage over you, but at the end of the race you get to play with the fun tyre. What's the one benefit of having the quicker tyre at the end of the race rather than at the beginning of the race is you also have a very light car at the end of the race. There you can see Skull, the car just squirming from behind him. Those are 13 lap old hards, so if that's what the hards are doing, I can only imagine what the mediums are doing. Let's have up the road. Pantry Star, he stays out on track. 14 laps now on the mediums. How much longer will he go? The gap now 3.7 seconds. It's definitely falling, and it's falling at a rate of knots. We've got a caution in sector 3. Quickly look towards the track map. It's just at the entrance of the stadium section. And everybody seems to have found momentum and is getting going yet again. Pantry Star leads the way. Skull P2 3.13 now, 3 flat. That is the gap, so the gap continues to come down. Of course, these two cars on very different strategies. Pantry Star at this stage of the race, his tyres should be falling off. Track should be coming to the hard runners. So what you're seeing in the gap is what is supposed to be happening. Of course, in the second stint of the race, things could change very quickly. Skull's going to have the medium compound, while everybody else around him is going to have to deal with the hards. He's done that job first. Pantry Star finally comes into the pits, relinquishes the lead. Skull is the new leader. He knows he's going to have to come into the pits and give up that lead. And how he'd love to stay there. Actually, there was a time in Formula 1 where you didn't have to make a pit stop. Well, you probably needed to, but at certain race circuits, if you filled up the fuel tank, it was possible to do the entire race without a pit stop. Very few circuits, Austria, Brazil, Monte Carlo. Of course, that no longer happens because everybody needs to use at least 2 compounds of tyre. That forces the pit stop. Unless we've got a wet race, then that rule falls away. Here's the Haas. There goes the Haas front wing. Tylee boy into the pits. That was the driver with 16 seconds worth of penalties. I think 10 of those seconds will go away now in the pits. Serve your pit infringements rather at your next pit stop. Now Top Gun into the pits. Skull out front. I think he's just lapped a Haas. He's gone past Tylee boy. Lapped on lap 17 of 36. Of course, just the 10 cars in the race, so everyone who finishes the race will pick up points. There's only one advantage to being lapped, really. If you are being lapped, you're probably not having a very good race. And at least, you don't have to do all the laps. You get to do a lap or 2 less, depending how many times you've been lapped. Of course, that was implemented because there was a time where some cars would be 6, 7, even 8 laps behind the leader. The race would come to the end. It's time to get on the podium, and you're still waiting for guys to come around. Of course, now if you're a lap behind and the leader has already crossed the checkered flag, your race is effectively over. Skull in the lead, but now getting distracted surely by the Haas. Of course, the Haas does ghost, so we're not going to see a situation where the leader hits a lapped car. That's not going to happen. That's what the ghosting is there for, but it can still cause a break in the concentration. Of course, for a lot of these drivers, they'll be focused on 2 things. Where is my braking point? Where is my apex? And then basically back to step 1. Where is my braking point? Where is my apex? That's all you want to be thinking about, corner after corner. And something as simple as a ghost car driving in close proximity to you is enough to put you off. It's enough to break that concentration, enough to just force a mistake. But Skull kept his nerve, and it was actually the ghost car that went on to make a mistake. At least he's cleared that car for now. Of course, Skull started on these hards. Stoffel behind him in P2, also on a set of hards, same age. Both those cars started on hards, but they're 15 seconds apart. Then Pantry Star, he's in P3, and he's just got past Stoffel. So I think Pantry Star is your provisional leader of the race. Just 15 seconds adrift from the Ferrari driver. You're going to take about 22 seconds, something like that, to do a pit stop here in Mexico. I wonder how much longer does Skull intend to stay out. We saw some of the drivers doing, what, 14, 15 laps on the medium. So that means he would be able to finish on a set of mediums were he to pit now. Of course, as that gap comes down to Pantry Star, 14.2, 14.1, he'll be losing out every single lap he stays out. The car behind him's got fresher tyres, and he's going to close the gap. Skull stays out for another lap. Top Gun having to do a bit of defending. He's got behind him Spikes, who's on a recovery drive and probably driving on a bit of a mission. Whenever a driver is on a recovery drive, the moment you spot him in your mirrors, take note. This is a driver that's going to go for any gap available. This is a driver who's probably annoyed, wants to get on with things. And Spikes, remember, he led this race at a stage. He's one of the contenders for the victory. And with 16 laps to go, he could still force a podium. Spoke about the gap at the front coming down. With every lap Skull stays out there on an aging set of hards, he's going to lose a bit of time. Gap on the last lap, 14.5 seconds. Now just the 13 seconds. So I wonder if we're going to see him peel into the pits. He does. Skull comes into the pits. That's going to hand the lead of the race back to Pantry Star. Andres will go into P2, but he's yet to make a pit stop. Stoffel as well, needing to make a pit stop. Will he follow the example of Skull? Where is Stoffel? There he is. He's decided to stay out. So he's going to do 20 laps on that hard set of tyres. Said Pantry Star was the provisional leader, and there he is. He's leading 1.4 seconds ahead of Andres. Andres already has 9 laps on those hards, so 8 laps rather. So if he does take them to the end, going to be a little frail. Then Top Gun P3, Spikes P4. Let's go back to the top performing Ferrari driver. Remember, he was in the lead, made a big mistake, went to the rear of the field. His teammate has since led the race for a while as well. Skull has since made a pit stop. He's now in P7. Few of the drivers ahead of him still need to make a pit stop. Spikes has got 14 laps on those hards, so it'll be interesting to see what kind of state they are in at the end of the race. And Stoffel will definitely have to make a pit stop. Of course, he started on those hard tyres, yet to pit. Best case scenario here for Stoffel would be a safety car in the middle of the race just when he's about to pit anyway. Get a free pit stop. but I think he has extended those hards pretty much as far as he can. He's actually now fallen down the order, and the 21 lap old hards are not going to help him make up any positions. So I think we will see him definitely come into the pits at the end of this lap. Be surprised to see him stay out. The view from P2, still able to see the P1 driver, but not a lot of him. Just a speck in the distance. That's what 2.5 seconds looks like. Support, of course, for Skull and Spikes. Two Ferrari drivers in P4 and 5. They've had such different races, been out of sync on strategy. One led the race, made a mistake, then the other came forward, led the race, then he had to pit, and somehow after all the action and two very different stories of a race, they've landed up on track together again. P4 and 5, just 1.5 seconds separating the two. Skull with a little bit of clean air. His teammate ahead of him, no clean air, dirty air, fighting the Red Bull, trying to get himself up onto the podium. Remember, his tyres will be a little bit out of sync. Top Gun ahead of him, 6 laps on the hards. Spikes 16 laps on the hards. So he's going to have a 10 lap deficit on those hard tyres. So any moves, any ground that he's going to make, he needs to make them now while those tyres have life in them. Because if he needs to maintain those at the end, he's not going to want to be in any DRS battles. Just looking for any trace of a DRS battle on circuit. This is the only one. Top Gun from Spikes, followed closely by Skull. Interesting scenario here now for the Ferrari team. And Skull will be hoping his teammate can clear Top Gun, because at the moment he's in a bit of a tricky position. Spikes isn't going to be in the position to swap places with Skull. He's fighting for position. Skull is just behind Spikes, and he's going to be thinking twice about overtaking his teammate, because it could end in disaster. So if you're the man at the rear there, you're going to be hoping Spikes can clear the Red Bull so you can have a go at the Red Bull. But at the moment, he's not really able to attack on those mediums, but he's got his teammate just ahead of him on an aging set of hards. So those two Ferraris on very, very different strategies. And the quicker of the two tyres, unfortunately, at the rear. I think, of course, if those two Ferraris were in a much quieter, calmer environment, they probably would have traded places. But because Spikes is very much in a race of his own, creates a difficult situation. Teammates should be getting advantage in this stage of the race. There's really nothing he can do. Of course, those tyres ahead of him will... Ooh, we've got a caution. Whenever I see a caution and a quick change in the timing sheets, it's a scary moment. But it has disappeared. We're back underway, no safety car. In fact, we've got all 10 runners that we started with. So a small field, but a consistent field. Another thing that's consistent in the field is penalties. Lots and lots of penalties. Let's just go through your penalties real quick. 3 seconds apiece for Top Gun, Skull, Andries, Stoffel and Panda. And Tyler Boy, well, he's making up the collection. It's up to 19 seconds. Of course, when you get close to 30 seconds, you suddenly get a DSQ. So he doesn't want to rack those up anymore. than he already has. 8 laps to go. These are the two Ferraris chasing a Red Bull. And Spikes, he will chase no more. He will lead. Gets ahead of the Red Bull before turn 1. The power of DRS down this straight. And with that loss of momentum, while he was busy getting passed by Spikes, he's now coming under pressure from the second Ferrari. And that's the power of those medium tyres on the second Ferrari. He's just got the superior traction. And now, what happens next? Ferrari P2, Ferrari P3. It should clearly be advantage to the Ferrari in P3. He's got a new set of medium tyres. Spikes on a very different race altogether. 19 laps on those hards. If he's able to bring those hards all the way to the end, well, that's just impressive. Skull, Spikes, now swap positions. Skull on the mediums. He's able to get some free air. Some clean air. Go and look for a gap. Spikes. I think those tyres starting to show their age. Gets passed by the Red Bull, but he's going to come back at the Red Bull, is he? No, he doesn't. Just tucks in behind the Red Bull. Looked like he was going to have an aggressive comeback there into turn 1, but backed out of it. Stoffel picks up a 3-second time penalty. A lot of drivers in the field tonight in the penalties column. For some of them, they'll get away with it. For others, it could cause some tears, especially if you lose a win or a podium due to those penalties. Skull and Top Gun, the men in P2 and 3, they both have penalties next to their name. So that would promote Spikes into P2 regardless. In fact, Skull has a 7/10 gap, then Spikes 6/10. So Spikes would jump both those cars as things stand, but surely Spikes is going to come into the pits. He must be praying for a safety car. Hope he's not, he's staying out. 21 laps on the hard compound. Gotzi picking up a 3-second time penalty, so now just 3 drivers remain outside of that penalties column. Could have another situation like we had last week in Imola, where everyone in the field picked up a penalty. Just one of those racetracks. When you're looking for the ultimate pace, the only way to do it is use all of the racetrack. And sometimes you use more of the racetrack than is on offer. Pantry Star out front, 5.1 seconds. Skull in P2. He hasn't been able to shake off the likes of the Red Bull and the second Ferrari. He would have been hoping to get out front on those mediums, build a bit of a gap. Unfortunately for him, Top Gun still very much within DRS. In fact, you can hardly see the Red Bull. That's how close it is to the Ferrari. Just tucked in behind it, almost looks like one car. And nothing you can do. Nothing you can do as the leader. If that car behind you gets DRS, you cannot defend down that straight in Mexico. It's just too long. Overpowered DRS. Almost a confirmed overtake. Skull just showing his nose. Letting the Red Bull know. You make a mistake. You leave a gap. I'm coming. Lap 29 of 36. no idea why I'm trying to change the camera with my mouse. I'm running a PlayStation. Pantry Star 4.4. And to make it even more comfortable, the two cars behind him both have penalties. 3 cars, Spikes, Boinkies, Pantry Star, those are the ones without penalties. I mentioned Boinkies earlier on, he's pretty known for staying out of the penalties column. And Skull, back up into P2. They switched positions at that very corner 1 lap ago. And it really could come down to, I've said it so many times in the last few weeks, it could come down to who's got DRS on the final lap. Pantry Star from Skull, from Top Gun, from Spikes. Remember, Spikes has no penalties next to his name. So if the checkered flag were to fall right now, he would take P2 away from his teammate. And I think that's why he's just stayed out on those awfully old hards. He knows he's in a good position. Cars ahead of him. They're not just going to be able to finish ahead of him on the road. They're going to have to finish way up the road in order to make up for those penalties. So he knows if he can just stay close behind, it's going to be enough to steal P2. Not much you can do about Pantry Star at this stage, unless Pantry Star were to start picking up penalties left, right and centre, which he has not done so far. It's one of 3 drivers. Keep away from the white lines, make no trouble in the pits. Of course, lots of different penalties available. Track infringements, speeding under the safety car, speeding in the pit lane. Pantry Star has made sure that he hasn't picked up any of those. The lead Ferrari, Skull in P3. Those penalties hanging over his head. Top Gun P2. Just want to get confirmation that P2 and 3 are on the same amount of penalties, because that would really mix things up. Yes, they are. They're both on 3-second penalties. One thing we don't know here in the comms box is how many warnings the driver has. Of course, the driver picks up 3 warnings, after which he gets a 3-second penalty. Then the process begins again. Pick up another 3, and you guessed it, your penalties go up to 6. So those two on 3 seconds apiece, they'll know exactly how many warnings they have towards their next penalty. And if either one of them is on 2 already, well, they'll be on their toes. Lap 32 of 36. Remember, we got a safety car on lap 33. I think it was. Was it on Monday? Maybe it was on Sunday. I'm not sure. We got a safety car with just 3 laps to go in the race. So do not consider this safe territory just yet. But hopefully we won't have any madness with the last few laps. Everybody's done such a good job. We started with 10 cars. We still have 10 cars. Sometimes drivers fall too far back. They retire voluntarily. And it's just great to see that everybody has stayed in the race, regardless of where you are in position, holding on to that 1 championship point. Even if you're down in P10, Tyler Boy, he's had a rough one. He's over a minute adrift from the rest of the field, but he's still driving. Because if anything were to happen crazy up the road, he'd be right back in it. And if you're no longer in the race and something crazy happens, well, then you're just going to kick yourself, because there's absolutely nothing you can do to make the most of it. Skull from Spikes. Those 3 cars I mentioned still outside the penalties column with 3 laps to go. It wouldn't change much at this stage if Pantry Star did pick up a penalty. It's got a 2.7 second gap to the cars behind, and they have penalties of their own. Spikes is close enough to... Yes, he is. He's close enough to take P2. There he is. He's actually fighting his teammate. What a job he's doing. You know, you need to take note of those tyres. Spikes 27 laps. Those tyres cannot be feeling in great condition. Yet he keeps on pushing, and somehow he's keeping up the pace with these cars around him, and he really shouldn't. 27 laps. He's now testing the extremes of the Pirelli. Starting to lose touch now with Top Gun. Crucial thing is to stay within a second. Every time you get that powerful DRS main straight, it's going to bring you right back into the battle. He'll know these 2 ahead of him have penalties, so he'll have that in the back of his mind. He doesn't absolutely have to make the overtake in order to gain the position. But trust me, he's a racing driver. Whether he's a real racing driver or a virtual racing driver, they share one thing in common. They want to get it done on the racetrack. Nobody wants to finish ahead or win a race just because of penalties. Want to get it done on the racetrack. Is that a Ferrari going slowly? No, it's not. Thought we saw a car ghosting in the background. But Top Gun, he's now in P2 with just 2 laps to go. And are the Ferraris going to be able to do anything about it? Do they have anything left? I think that advantage Skull was getting on the medium compound has now fallen away. His teammate Spikes just behind him, having tyre troubles of his own, having to make a set of tyres last a very long time. We get a caution late on into the race. Lap 35 of 36. There can be no more safety cars. There's no more time. And we'll go with the leader as he begins his final lap. .4 seconds is the gap, and he'll know that if somehow they catch up to him, there's still some penalties attached to their name. Pantry Star very comfortable on that final lap. In fact, Top Gun can see the leader. Unfortunate thing there for Top Gun is his tyres are just as old. 20 laps for Pantry Star, 19 laps for Top Gun. If Top Gun was sitting in P2 with a better set of tyres, well, Pantry Star might be in a little bit of trouble. And every time you get too excited, remember, he's got a penalty next to his name. Too late for a safety car. Dead Queen. What a race. Got that set of tyres to the end of the race. In fact, I never thought he was going to do it. But when he goes over the line to finish the race, he will have done 30 laps on that single set of tyres. Everybody having a bit of a weave. I think that is the sign of the end of the season. A little bit of a celebration from everybody. Pantry Star does take the victory. Top Gun finishes P2. Then Skull in P3. And Spikes, well, he definitely felt the effects of those tyres at the end. He finishes P4. Just now wait for the final cars to come over the line. Gonna be waiting a while for that final horse. Gotsi. He enters the stadium now. Of course, the baseball stadium is still there. This was the old baseball stadium. New one just next to the track. And I believe Tiley Boy was a lap behind, so we won't be waiting for him. So now we just await those official results, mute the game so F1 don't copyright claim this video. A very greedy bunch there at the FOM. I've been copyright for 2 seconds worth of F1 theme. How crazy is that? So there are your official results. We started with 10 drivers, small field, but we finished with 10 drivers. Fantastic drive from everybody. Pantry Star, class of the field this evening, finishes P1. Then Top Gun P2. Skull finishes off the podium, and he also picked up the fastest lap of the race, so he's going to get 16 points for this final round. Spike's P4, Boinky's P5. Then we've got Panda, Stoffel, Andres, Gotzi, and Tiley Boy picking up the final point of the final round here in SAFRL. Of course, if you've been watching the channel for a while, then you'll know the drill. We're going to take a few seconds, maybe a minute or two, just to see if anybody wants to join the NFR cool down room. We will then be able to bring them into the comms box, have a little bit of a chat about the race. Or we could have a repeat of yesterday and everybody is shy of the microphone. So we might get some people join us, we might get nobody join us, who knows. We'll just wait a little while. Of course, to everybody who watched tonight, a much quieter stream than we had last night. But for those of you who were here, you were here throughout from the beginning to the end. Some of our usual viewers, well, they were driving a car over in DRS. So for the ones who tuned in, for the ones who stayed to the end, I want to thank you again. I'm sure you are subscribed. If you're not subscribed, remember to do so. We're trying to get to 500. And obviously, if you have been here many times, what you can do is leave a like on the video. Doesn't look like anyone is joining for now. So obviously SAFRL, they've come to the end of Season 8. That was round 10, Mexico. We had the finale on Monday for Tier 1. We just had the finale now for Tier 2. There's going to be a bit of a break in play for SAFRL. I'm not sure if it's going to be a week, 2 weeks, or whatever the case may be. But when I do have news and clarification on that, I'll bring it up on one of the broadcasts. For the time being, we still have DRS, we still have SKR on the channel. SAFRL may have some non-championship races in between now and Season 9. And if they do, well, we might have to put them on this channel, because channel's going to feel a little bit quiet without Monday and Wednesday nights. So to everyone who watched, thank you very much. Until I see you again, cheers.